Hi guys, so here we go. As promised, this is the EG. So this project kind of took over for this project, mainly because everything on this car is kind of plug and play. You kind of don't have to fabricate anything, which is really, really nice. And it's nice to be able to not have to do any of that, right? Build a car in a pretty short amount of time. And this is just, I guess, an introduction to the EG. I have a lot of progress in this car in a pretty short amount of time. I will probably post some footage of what we had to do to this car to get it to this point. It actually looks really good up until now. If you follow my Instagram or know what this car looked like when we got it, it was not great. But I guess here's kind of an update on what we've done to the car. It has been, I guess, re-clipped. When I bought this car, it had no front clip on it. They actually cut the front core support out of the car and they put a tubular in the front. So we went back, and apparently at some point it had been wrecked on the left-hand side. So this frame rail was kind of out of whack. And we went to a junkyard and cut the entire front end off of another EG coupe that was out there. And my dad does body work and has for a very long time. So we actually grafted the frame rail of the red coupe into the white hatchback, which I'm pretty excited about this. Like, my dad does really good work. You can't even tell. It was actually grafted, I think, pretty much through this. Actually, it was right here in this seam. I can tell because I'm looking for it, but you probably can't. So right through here is where we made the inside cut. We went up through this factory seam, up through this factory seam, and the outside of the frame rail was grafted in about here on the outside. So it wasn't a straight cut across the frame rail. It is gusseted on the inside on both seams and then seam welded on each side. So that's about as strong of a joint as you can get for doing that type of repair. Same thing on this side. I don't know if you can really see it. You can't really see it, but it was cut right through here and then cut right through here on the outside. So it is like a staggered Z cut in order to get the front end back on this car. So that is where we stand. It was all blasted, taken down to bare metal, and then recoated white. And it looks pretty damn good. Yeah, I would say this. It is, again, the people that had it before me were concerned about it being straight and square, and it was breaking axles. And I don't think that that was the reason why it was breaking axles, because it wasn't that far to square, but I think they had another issue. But we snagged this shelf for fairly cheap because it was having issues and they were just done fighting it. And then we completely grafted a whole new front end on this thing. So that's what we did. We have the factory rear support. I did put a manual rack back in the car. These brake lines are going to go away. We bought some finishing lines kit, which is actually going to be a brake booster delete with a Wilwood, I guess, master cylinder. It's all manual. Same with the clutch. It's going to be Wilwood clutch master, and it should improve brake feel. It's not going to be power assist, but it will definitely add more controllability to the brake system as far as like road coursing. So that was the goal for this car. It's not going to be a drag car. I say that it might hit a drag strip here and there, but for the most part, it's going to be a driver car. I didn't want to spend a lot of money and make a lot of horsepower just to go straight. I kind of want to make less horsepower and go around corners, because I've never really done the whole go around corners thing. So it is not perfect. One of the reasons why I purchased this car was because I didn't want to go tear up my other car on a road course. It's way too nice to put in the ditch, but this one you can tell, like, it's not perfect. Like, all of it. I mean, it looks good from here. That's a pretty solid white EG, but I mean, you can tell, like, it's got scuffs and bumps, and all this can be repainted, but it's got paint chips and cracks and scratches, and it's missing moldings, and it's just not like, I mean, it looks good from 20 yards, but it's definitely not perfect, right? And I didn't want a car that I was worried about sliding off the track and tearing up. So this is the one. This is what we're going to do. This is gonna get this motor, which was originally supposed to go in this, but then we bought that, which is another K24A2. It actually has a better cams in it. I think that's a 06 to 08 with the better cams in it. This is an 05 motor, so I think the only thing it really lacks is the pistons are a little bit different and the cam is a little bit different. The intake cam, I think. I could be wrong on that. I might not be wrong, but I could be wrong. But this is going to be NA. It is going to go, and I kind of like this one because it's a lot cleaner anyways. They clean up really, really nice. And from what I gather, it has a lot lower miles than the other unit does. So that's the motor that's going to go in the EG. It will not be turbo. It'll be normally aspirated. That should make like 220 to 230 at the tire. And a car that weighs, I'm assuming that this car weighs, it's going to weigh like 2,000 pounds or so. So I guess along with that said, manual rack, traction bars, radiator mount, all that stuff is pretty much gutted. I say gutted. It is minimalistic. It is not gutted. It does have a full interior in it, which is kind of rare for an EG of this age. Everybody like bought these and gutted them. So it has a full interior. One thing I will say is that under the dash, which you can't really see, it is pretty much hollow, right? It's got a speedometer, no AC, no radio, no airbag, no heater, no controls, no nothing. So it eliminated the majority of that. Should lighten the car pretty good. I think that, I mean, granted, that's not like a huge weight loss, but it is something. And I'm not going to use any of that anyway on the motor. It's going to be full manual, no power brakes, no power steering, no AC. So it should be pretty lightweight. I'm thinking that it's probably 2,000 pounds. I don't know. It might be 2,100, 2,150, but for the most part, it is going to be fun to drive. Since I bought it, we did a few things. We did Koenig wheels, Nitto Neogen tires. They're 205. Oh Lord, Alex is probably going to kill me for not doing this. 205 5015s on a 7.5 inch wheel with a plus 35 offset. He was giving me shit because he told me I should have bought plus 41s, but the back looks really, really good. There's no poke in the back. The front, it's the wheels turn right now, but it doesn't poke yet, but I still got to put the rotor on. So it might poke a little bit, but by the time we get this car with a camera that needs to go around a track, I don't think there's gonna be any poke at all on the top side, so it should fit really nice. And then obviously new headlights, new corners, and waiting on the Hasport kit for this car to put the motor in it, and then we're gonna have to do axles, which I have the RS6 axles back here. We're gonna have to swap cup to cup on the insides to make them work. Apparently that is something that works fairly well. Sorry for the garage, it's really, really messy. And then I bought or came across a decent deal on a EP3 transmission out of a Civic Si, a newer model Civic Si. It is still a 5-speed. This is an open diff, but we found a factory Honda limited slip that we're gonna put inside of this thing. So that will be the transmission that goes in the car. So 5-speed limited slip, making 230-ish horsepower in a let's say 2,100 pound car. It keeps getting heavier every time I talk about it, but this is it. That should be fun. It does have an RBC, or will get an RBC intake that I've spent some time on shaving. Skunk 2 74 millimeter throttle body, neck down to a 72 millimeter throttle body plate, which is, we're gonna actually open the mouth up on the RBC to accommodate a 72 millimeter. So there will be a little bit of a difference between the throttle body and the intake manifold, but I don't wanna cut into the IAC port, and there should be enough airflow for this thing, so I'm not too worried about it. But we're gonna port the spacer and the intake to be nice and smooth on the inside, where there's no like ridges between the two. We've got some like, I think that they're 1600 cc injectors coming for this car, which is absolutely overkill. I do want to set this car up with an E85 friendly fuel system. So we're going to run way too much pump and way too much injector on the car, just for the simple fact that I don't like watching dyno videos where they're like, oh, we ran out of injector or ran out of fuel pump. And that's why we limited the horsepower. So that will not be a factor on this. Even to the point where if it does get forced induction, I think that fuel system with the bigger pump and the bigger injectors, it should support pretty much anything I want to throw at this thing. I don't know what those 1600s will flow or what they'll support on the 85, but I would think it'd be hopefully north of like 450, 500. So that would be my biggest pet peeve on dyno videos. You spend all this money on a motor and all this money on parts, and then you skimp out on injectors and a fuel pump, which is actually fairly cheap in the grand scheme of things when you talk about a build. So I hate seeing dyno videos that tell me that they ran out of fuel system, because that's kind of a cop-out. But that will not be the case on this car. That will well outdo the 250 horsepower, 230 horsepower I expect to see out of this car to begin with, and then it should support me well into making horsepower in the future. So that's about an update on the car. We have pretty much, I would say pretty much everything. We have quite a few of the parts to get it back together. I'm still debating on a computer and a wiring harness. I'm looking at some options for that. I do want to run a tucked harness in the car just because I don't want it to look, I mean, there's a lot of effort. Well, not really a lot of effort. This is kind of what we received when we bought the car, but I want to keep it kind of as minimalistic as possible. We didn't like shave everything and plug all the holes and all that. I'm not too worried about that because it's a race car, but it will at least look halfway decent and clean. We do not have a hood for this car, so it might just run around town without a hood on it for quite some time, but I am looking for a factory hood to put back on it. And then that's about it, man. Small update on the DSM. You guys probably saw my last post about how much we had to take out of the rear subframe. I'm debating on, and this might be a long-term process, but they sell a tubular rear subframe for this car. It is pretty pricey, but it's either buy that and make room for the rear diff and move the motor back where it needs to go, which I'm assuming is probably about where that orange line is. So another 2.5, 3 inches to get the axles where they need to be. And you have to take way more meat out than what I have already taken out. And I'm not too happy about that. So I'm not giving up on it. It is going to take a little bit longer. I think the tubular is the way to go. It's just a matter of trying to figure out if I want to go that route or try to fabricate something myself. So that's where the car's at. I do believe that once that decision or that hurdle is overcome, that this will go probably a lot quicker than it has been, right? Once I get the motor where it goes, I think that axles would be the biggest hurdle at that point. Other than that, it's engine mounts, which are welded in, and then electronics, which is pretty much the same thing as I'm doing to this car and this car. The chassis harness might be a little bit different, obviously connection points, but I think it's going to be very, very similar because the harnesses are fairly close. And then it should be running. Now, I don't know if that's going to be 2 months from now. I don't know if that's going to be 8 months from now, but that is the goal for this. Haven't given up on it. I know that's what this channel started to be about, but if I'm being honest, this is a lot more fun and a lot easier to work on. So that's kind of where my focus has been. I don't know if I've said this in a previous video, but the goal for this car is to go around a track, right? My oldest son is about to turn 11, and when he turns 12, he can ride shotgun with me around the track. So I wanted to get him involved in that, at least go scoot around a track with me, and then potentially at some point learn how to drive a stick, learn how to drive this thing before he ever gets on the street. So it does have a long-term plan. I think it would be fun to take my son around a racetrack in this thing, and I really think it's going to be a lot safer than the DSM is. So that's what we're doing. Everything for this car is like buy it and put it in. So that makes it really, really easy, really, really nice. Obviously, Hondas are everywhere, so parts are very, very plentiful, as opposed to the DSM where it's like it's only made for certain years. It only fits certain years, and there's only so many people that have them. So that has been a hurdle with this. And I think it's a hurdle that I'm going to have to overcome as I build this thing, because I know that certain components like coilovers and shit, man, even like hubs and axles and brakes and all that stuff is going to be a challenge to find, because it's just not as available, right? Like, you go to Rock Auto, you can buy anything you want for the EG, but when you go to Rock Auto and look for stuff for this, like even ball joints and tie run-ins, it gets kind of very, very limited. So that takes some of the fun out of it. But we will push forward and see what happens. So anyways, until then, I guess we'll see you in the next update. I appreciate you guys watching, even though this is fairly boring footage. It is what it is, and this is what I'm working on. So I hope you have an interest in that, and I appreciate you guys watching. And I guess let me know what you guys think. I appreciate it.